Hey guys, it's going to be that time of the year again. In May, the fort will open up. So I thought it'd be a good idea to start talking about the types of gear to use when you're doing something like this, which is more of a run and gun type of thing. It's less like doing an event like a wedding, for example, or even a martial arts competition where things are in a fixed position. So when you're shooting reenactors, they're moving. They're not in a set place. At least that's the way things are at the fort. So what that means is you'll be moving from a different venue, if you will, to another as the reenactors move around. So you're not going to have a fixed position from which to work. For example, if you were doing a wedding, you've got a place that you can store your stuff, right? You're going to walk around the wedding, the single venue, and take photographs. You can always go back to wherever your base is and do whatever you need, and then just walk back into the venue. When you're doing things like reenactors, the challenge is to keep up with the reenactment going on, and that means, for the most part, going as light as possible. Now, that doesn't mean that you may not need something to stabilize your camera. Now, you're going to hear a lot of people when they talk about tripods make comments about how people could use a tripod and then push the shutter down. Their point is somewhat valid, and here's why. When you use something like a tripod, your goal is to stabilize the shot as much as possible in some circumstances. Because of that, that means that you want to keep all the vibration you can away from the camera. Your hand touching the camera to push down the shutter does introduce some vibration. By definition, you're pushing down on the shutter button. But the other thing you can use that for, and this is where monopods come in as well, is you can set up so that it's easier for you to hold, for example, a heavier piece of gear. When you're shooting reenactors, you are not going to be up close and personal. You are not going to be shooting with anything under 100 millimeter, right? Probably 400 millimeters to get those shots that you want. Now, you can do that using the good glass or the cheaper glass. The difference between the two is typically what your F comes down to, right? If you want to get that perfect shot of a particular reenactor, their expression on their face or something with the smoke around them and everybody else blurring into the background, you want to get down to a 228. And in order to do that, the lens, the glass has to be bigger. With the bigger glass comes with the larger weight, right? More glass, more weight. It's basic physics. So in order for you to keep running around and taking those photographs, one way to do it is to have a tripod where you can plunk it down and set up and go. But here's where a monopod can be a little bit better for you for two things. Let's talk first about how a monopod is better than a tripod when it comes to carrying, right? Your tripod, you're going to have to fold up every time you move from point to point. Now, some are more quick release than others. They have to lock those legs out. So you have to unlock those legs and fold them up and move on to your next spot. You also want to have a quick release head on them of some kind so you can pop that head in and click it right off and go to the next shot, which a lot of them do a good job of having something like that available that you can just pop the head on and off easily. With a monopod, you don't have to collapse it down because you can actually use the monopod like a walking stick. You could leave the camera on the top. I wouldn't recommend it because of the weight. But by having that monopod as a walking stick, you don't have to keep opening it up, closing it down, right? It's just the single shaft, which allows you to take the weight off of you as you're shooting it, right? You're not having to maintain the weight on the camera as much. But at the same time, you're not, you don't have to keep opening and closing it, right? It's taking that weight for you. You can just pop the camera off and just walk to your next location. The nice part about the bigger lenses, of course, is that they move the connection point to more along where the center of gravity is going to be, right? So you're not connecting your camera to the tripod or the monopod. You're connecting the lens to it. The reason for that's pretty simple. The lens is heavy. If you were holding just the camera to that tripod, first of all that weight's going to want to pull it down. But secondly, that's a lot of weight of a lens to be on the camera. So if you're walking around with a camera with a big lens, don't hold it by the camera. Hold it by the lens, right? That's going to prevent damage to the camera. It's going to prevent wear on those treads. When you hook it up to your monopod or tripod, it's going to balance that out a little bit better for you. Now, putting it to your body is something we'll talk about next week. How do you harness it to yourself? But when you're carrying the camera around and doing an event like this, it's easy to just pop that camera on to a monopod or a tripod. It gives you that little extra relief on your arms. Because think about this. You are traveling around with the reenactors, right? You're moving from place to place. You're setting up, you're breaking down. You're setting up, you're breaking down. You're getting into the position where you need to be. You have a bigger piece of glass on there, so it's a little bit more onerous on you to carry that around, have that extra weight. But what you can do with the monopod or tripod is take a little of that extra off of you. You're going to have to carry this thing around with you from place to place. So this gives you that little extra relief when you're taking the photographs. Monopods and tripods allow you to spin, so you get that easily. But with a monopod, you can just pick it up and move it a lot quicker than you can a tripod. Tripod, you got to worry about the 3 legs. The monopod, you only have to worry about the single. Makes it much easier to work with for a situation such as this. Now, if you're doing an event like a wedding, right, you're probably shooting with a 50. Maybe you're going up to 100, 200 to get full shots. You don't have the same size glass at a 400, for example, that you might be using to get the images really close. And this is going to be dependent upon how close you can get to the action, right? So the main part that you have to do up front is find out where it's going to be and walk the venue. Find out what it's going to be like. For example, at Fort Ticonderoga, the tree line is a good indication of how close you're going to get to the action. For example, as you head down to the pavilion, which is also where they've got the corn maze, you're heading down that driveway. There's trees on both sides. They don't usually work over on the corn maze or on the corn side, because they do have a full field planted of corn usually during the year. They work on the other side, which is the right-hand side as you're going out toward the pavilion. It's not a very wide area on that side, and you're going to be stuck at the tree line. But you're going to be pretty close to the action there. When the venue moves away from there and starts to move, for example, up the hill, you could be much, much further away. Looking at the venue up there and looking at the tree line and assuming the tree line is going to be that demarcation line gives you an idea of how far away from the action you're going to be. then you can figure out what would be the appropriate lens for the type of images you want to capture. Now, I got some really good images captured with basic glass, a zoom lens. I think it's 5.6 when it's zoomed all the way out. And I got some good photographs with them. But knowing where I was going to be and the conditions I was going to be shooting under helped. It also brings up another point is, do you carry one or two cameras with you? And that is something we will take up on a later episode. So monopods and tripods have a valid place in your toolkit, especially if you're going to be shooting, for example, all day and you're going to be lifting a heavy lens around with you all the time. It might behoove you to have something like this, because even if you think you can get through it all day, holding that lens up is going to take a toll on your arm. And when you get toward the end of the day, especially if you're shooting for almost an 8-hour period, that could be a little bit much. Now, things at the fort usually get rolling about 10 to 11 o'clock in the morning, and then they'll go until 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So keep that in mind. If you're going to start at 10 and you're going to go to 4, that's 6 hours of shooting with breaks here and there, to be sure, but that's a lot of shooting, and it's a lot of carrying a heavy lens around with you. Also, bearing in mind where things are going to be and when they're going to be. So pay attention to not only what the venue's like, but the timing that things will be in different areas. You might be able to get away with a smaller lens for certain areas, like that walkway area that I was talking about. The problem that you're going to have there is the event could move rapidly from that good area where you can get really close shots to another area where you have to be further away. So then you have to balance out where you're going to be shooting versus where it's going to be and how many lenses you're going to take with you. Are you going to have a good 200-300 millimeter lens, prime lens, that you're going to use because this is what you're going to want to use as your main lens for these distance shots? Does that mean you can position yourself in such a way that you can use that for everything? Or are you going to have to bring a 50 or 100 that you use as a secondary lens that you flip in and out so that you can get those closer up shots? But again, the bottom line here is know your venue, know what's going to be, where it's going to be, and a monopod or a tripod could help you deal with a heavier lens. And that's what I got for you guys this week. Next week, we will talk about how we're going to carry those cameras around with us between shots. And I'll talk to you guys next week.